everyone, welcome to Leonis Legacies. I'm Dinna Rivera-Pitt, historian and curator here at the Leonis Adobe Museum. Today, we're going to be sharing the story of Miguel Leonis, the owner and resident of this historic Adobe home and the namesake of our museum. By all accounts, he was a handsome and imposing figure, standing 6 feet 4 inches tall with striking blue eyes. He was hard to miss. Exactly who is Miguel Leonis? Leonis was a French Basque born in 1822 in a small Basque village in France called Cambo-les-Bains. And yes, his name is Miguel, not Michel, the French equivalent of the name, as so many assume. He arrived in the San Fernando Valley sometime in 1854, but we know virtually nothing about him prior to his valley arrival, including when and how he first entered California. Miguel represents the often forgotten but prominent French-speaking population of 19th century Los Angeles, immigrants who contributed significantly to the development of the city before and after California's statehood. They were pioneering entrepreneurs who became leading politicians, bankers, real estate developers, commercial winemakers, restaurateurs, hoteliers, rancho owners, and all-around civic-minded, successful businessmen. While Miguel Leonis was equally successful, he was unique among them. Leonis did not run for political office or sit on company boards or participate in municipal activities like the other Frenchmen. His wealth was procured solely from land and property acquisitions. Also in contrast to his French counterparts, Leonis was illiterate, but don't let his inability to read and write fool you. He was a brilliant businessman, gifted with an amazing memory, who ultimately transformed himself into a wealthy real estate mogul. In his portrait, Miguel appears well-groomed in proper formal attire, which was totally in keeping with a 19th century photograph sitting for a man of Miguel Leonis' stature. The photo is undated, so we don't know his exact age, but we estimate Leonis to be in his early 50s in this image. Another distinctive component about him, which was contrary to Basque custom, was the fact that Leonis' spouse of nearly 30 years, Espiritu Chihuya, was a Chumash Tongva Native American. This was a type of union that was quite exceptional for the time. He met Espiritu on nearby Rancho El Escorpion while working as a cattle and sheep herder. Espiritu's father, Odon, was one of the 3 original Native Americans who received Rancho El Escorpion in 1845, a Mexican land grant and a type of grant rarely awarded since the recipients were Native Americans. Through his relationship with Espiritu, Leonis was eventually able to take complete ownership of Rancho El Escorpion. This acquisition was the start of his fabled career as the Los Angeles land baron. During his lifetime, Miguel Leonis amassed over 18,000 prime acres of land and dozens of various lots and structures, not just in Los Angeles County, but throughout Southern California, and came to be known as the King of Calabasas and the Big Basque. Tall, handsome, wealthy, and a bit of an intimidating figure, Leonis was already a local celebrity of sorts in his own day, with the most mundane things being written about him in Los Angeles newspapers. It's important to note, however, that most of what is written about Miguel Leonis, both in print and online, are by and large tall tales. One of the primary reasons for this can be traced back to Leonis' contemporary and Calabasas neighbor, Horace Bell. Bell was a well-known Los Angeles figure who wrote a fictitious novel and stories about Miguel Leonis after his death. Over the years, Bell's fictional works mistakenly became regarded as history. The question remains, Why did Bell choose to write about Miguel Leonis and no other wealthy French immigrant rancho owner? There were certainly many others. I think one of the main reasons is that Leonis seemed to come straight out of central casting. He was the perfect character to embellish and write about, which is exactly what happened. In order to sell newspapers or manuscripts, it was easy for writers to exaggerate and paint Leonis as a commanding villain of sorts. He was referred to as an overbearing Basque in court documents, legal cases almost always involving land disputes. Did Leonis physically protect his land against squatters? Absolutely, but so did many landowners of the period. We have to remember, Miguel was also a well-respected businessman, sometimes referred to as Monsieur Leonis in local newspapers. We have testimony from original Calabasas residents attesting to his kindness to them as children, despite the language barrier. Interviewed in the 1960s, a Leonis neighbor, Katie Ijams Haas, described his generosity. Another neighbor, Sadie Gray, recounted that whenever Miguel Leonis saw children walking along the road, he would place them in his horse and wagon and give them a ride home. In addition to his native French and Basque, Miguel spoke Spanish fluently, which was the language used at home with his wife and daughter. He spoke very little English. Miguel and Espiritu only had one child together, Marcelina, who unfortunately died of unknown causes at the age of 20 in 1880. Miguel commissioned a large and costly marble gravestone for her burial site at the original Calvary Cemetery. It's safe to assume both Miguel and Espiritu were greatly affected by Marcelina's death. Miguel Leonis died in 1889 while traveling over the Cahuenga Pass in a wagon loaded with firewood. He was thrown from the wagon and crushed underneath the wheels. Leonis's stepson, Juan Menendez, who was Espiritu's son from her previous relationship with Jose Menendez, was one of the passengers and testified in court about the incident. At the time of his death, Miguel's estate was worth about $300,000, the equivalent of approximately $7.5 million today. Leonis left Espiritu, his common-law wife of almost 30 years, cash and investments worth a mere $10,000, with very strict stipulations. Shockingly, Leonis referred to Espiritu in his will as his faithful housekeeper. Sounds despicable, doesn't it? But we have to stop and think about that term used to reference his wife. It's very likely that the phrase faithful housekeeper was something crafted by his attorney to protect Leonis's assets. Leonis wanted to ensure that the land empire he built for himself was not mishandled by his common-law wife, who apparently had no experience in conducting business. Additionally, Leonis may have inherited the distorted European colonial view about indigenous peoples. Remember, however, in comparison to most Native Americans of the time, Marcelina Leonis and her mother, Espiritu, lived a privileged life because of Miguel Leonis. Like most successful businessmen of the day, Leonis was tough and litigious, but was not the total villain writers make him out to be because of fictional accounts and other erroneous sources. During the many court battles over Leonis's estate after his death, it was alleged that he fathered a second daughter with a woman named Maria Labrada Pryor. His second daughter was born in 1877 and was known as Nettie Pryor. Nettie sued for a share of Leonis's estate, but the jury ruled against her since Leonis never publicly acknowledged her during his lifetime. Like his daughter Marcelina and many leading citizens of the day, Miguel Leonis was buried at Calvary, a Catholic cemetery constructed in 1844 when the old burial site adjacent to the Plaza Church in the original Los Angeles Pueblo reached capacity. Due to the city's rapid population growth, Calvary Cemetery also became overcrowded and was ultimately neglected and abandoned. Calvary became a place with its own scandalous history in Los Angeles. By 1895, many families began relocating their loved ones to New Calvary Cemetery, a 52-acre parcel in Boyle Heights purchased by the Catholic Church. Leonis' relatives followed suit and transferred Miguel, his daughter Marcelina, and his brother Jean to the Leonis family plot on the new site, where they remain today. The relatives who oversaw the relocation were evidently not particularly close to Miguel. The grave marker they had fabricated displays the wrong birth year for Miguel, who was born in 1822, not 1828. Another brother, known as John Leonis, who died in 1906 after the family relocation to New Calvary Cemetery, is also included on the grave marker. I hope you enjoyed learning about the Big Basque. To learn more about Miguel Leonis' incredible real estate holdings and why he chose Calabasas as his place of residence, or to find out about the fate of Espiritu after Leonis' death, we invite you to join us for other episodes of Leonis Legacies. Please check Leonis Adobe's social media for additional episodes and announcements.